The president again gave an address. 10:30 was the time. And we want to bring you a playback of that address, and then we'll open the phone lines, because this was the second time in a row that he, by way of policy, had decided to provide amenities at almost a considerable rate. The first was water, free for the next 3 months for the ordinary Ghanaian, and then a half cost of electricity again within the period for consumers.
Whilst the results are encouraging, they're suggesting a limited number of positives and community spread. We expect to be able to test some 10,000 additional samples in the coming week to give us a clearer picture to enable us to take a decision on the way forward. It appears that our common efforts have been modestly successful in containing the virus and minimizing the spread. Undoubtedly, the decisions taken from day one to act quickly and decisively and impose what may have seemed like harsh restrictions have now proven to be effective and have saved a lot of lives. However, this fight is not yet over, and we're by no means out of the woods yet. As I said, we now have in total 378 confirmed cases of infections, with 6 deaths, 4 recoveries, 2 in critical condition, and the remaining 370 are mild cases who are in isolation and either being managed at home or at treatment centers. Fellow Ghanaians, I've come to you this evening to ask for your continued patience as we continue to implement and extend the efforts that have so far proven to be helpful. It is important that we stay the course and bear with the difficulties that come with it. The final result, hopefully, will be freedom from the virus. So the decision has been taken, through the issuance of another executive instrument, to extend the restriction on movements in the Greater Accra metropolitan area and Kaswa, and the Greater Kumasi metropolitan area and its contiguous districts by 1 more week, beginning 1 a.m. on Monday the 13th of April, subject to review. As part of measures to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, we have decided on further measures of mitigation for all Ghanaians for the next 3 months, i.e. April, May, and June. Government will fully absorb electricity bills for the poorest of the poor, i.e. for all lifeline consumers. That is free electricity for persons who consume 0 to 50 kilowatt hours a month for this period. In addition, for all other consumers, residential and commercial, government will absorb 50% of your electricity bill for this period, using your March 2020 bill as your benchmark. For example, if your electricity bill was 100 cedis, you will pay only 50 cedis, with government absorbing the remaining 50 cedis. This is being done to support industry, enterprises, and the service sector in these difficult times, and to provide some relief to households for lost income. Nevertheless, I urge all Ghanaians to exercise discipline in their use of water and electricity. The food items being distributed in Accra and Kumasi to the vulnerable and needy are being done through NADMO and the Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Chief Executives, with the assistance of the faith-based organizations, to whom I'm rendering a special word of gratitude. National Trust Fund for their kind gesture. Fellow Ghanaians, today is Maundy Thursday, and tomorrow, a few hours from now, Friday, 10th April, Good Friday, is the start of Easter, which for us Christians commemorates the unique sacrifice that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ made for our salvation on the cross of Calvary. The season is a good opportunity for all of us to reflect on that ultimate sacrifice, and for each one of us also to make a sacrifice for the sake of humanity's survival. We're used to attending Easter conventions, making merry, visiting friends and family, and having a good time. Yes, like a lot of you, I was also looking forward to visiting GHT during this time of the year, which I've been doing for several years. However, I'm urging all of us to do the exact opposite of what we have been used to for many years. Stay at home. I ask you to keep your distance from your parents, grandparents, and extended family, and celebrate this holiday apart. Do not host a big family gathering, and sternly refuse to attend one if you're invited. Your relatives will understand you're doing this out of love for them. Please make that sacrifice. Misremo, asama maken, mundeso, ebebwa yenyina, memamu nyina efisiapa. Minkpanyofai, mibi minke, nye yeno, ibawa wofen, mihanye, afio, afi. So on behalf of my beautiful Rebecca, my children, grandchildren, and entire family, and members of government, I wish you all a joyous and happy Easter.
And that is the address from the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And all of you now know the content. And what has been prominent is that announcement that 50% rate is now what electricity and its consumption will cost you. But of course, we have to do some analysis on the subject and the decision by the president for his government to do this fully. But ultimately, we do know the objective is to make sure that the ordinary Ghanaian is cushioned within these difficult times. But it's also important we all get to know that call to all of us to make sure that we respect the guidelines or the rules within this period of the lockdown is the utmost priority for every Ghanaian within the Accra, Tema, and Greater Kumasi areas. Well, we'll open the phone lines very soon. But before we do so, let's speak to the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Mr. Ben Boakye. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Walker.
Great. Now, what do you make of the president's announcement, especially regarding the half tariff for electricity?
Yes, I think it's been hinted, it had been hinted for the announcement. The majority leader in Parliament hinted that government was actually considering it, and we had opportunity to comment on that. And our concern really was that, yes, you can reduce tariff, but before you do that, you have to show how you're going to pay for it. Because electricity is a commodity, and if you absorbing the cost of that commodity, you have to tell everybody how you're going to pay, because government only has what we give to. They're not going to get the money from anywhere but from us, through taxes and other businesses that government we have. So if you presented a budget to Parliament that did not have electric tariff, reduction accounted for, how do you implement that, and where do you get the money to be able to do that? And 50% cut, in our estimation, would be about 3 billion Ghana cedis, of cost to government. And our challenge really is that, the power sector as we have it is facing tremendous challenges. I.e., gas that we buy and we are not paying for it. And as we speak, we owe OCTP gas almost $200 million we haven't paid. The IPPs in totality are owed about $1 billion. That is also about 6 billion Ghana cedis in debt. And the government was chipping in once in a while with money to ensure that these power plants continue to generate electricity. But with the effect of coronavirus and, slumping oil prices, it's going to be difficult to intervene on that front to continue paying electricity bills. And the question really was,
Mr. Boakye, we seem to have lost him on the line. We'll re-establish that line and then continue with the conversation. But what do you also think about the president's announcement? And there have been a lot of commentary on social media as well. But while we take a look at how this has been received joyously across the broader section of the population, it also means that somewhat we have to pay for it sometime, some other day. So we'll be taking a look at related issues or questions of what the current mix or component of electricity pricing is and how those recoveries could be made for those who produce electricity based on what is collected from consumers. And we'll pose all these questions to the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Energy Policy. And you would know that he said that ASAP, their analysis is having a conclusion that this is going to cost the government or those who produce electricity, they would need some in excess of some $550 million US. That's $3 billion within the period. He's back on the line, Mr. Boakye. Again, you were saying something. Can you please just maybe start for us and as you continue?
I was saying that essentially we really need at this point to, in the midst of these interventions, begin to answer the question how sustainable the power sector can be and how promptly government would want to pay, for these interventions so that it doesn't degenerate into another difficulty post COVID-19. Because, the power sector, like I mentioned, is struggling. And paying the bills in the sector has been a challenge. So if we add into it, then we need to really create some space within the budget to be able to finance that quickly to ensure that we do not worsen the situation in the power sector.
When it comes to citizens paying this rate, if you look at the current price and mix of electricity, its generation, and ultimately the distribution to the consumer, what are they made of? And what could be the implications ultimately for those who tend to generate power by way of what the precedent has been in terms of how they get their receipts or what they have generated in payments?
No, I think for the generators, it will be a worrying moment, really, for them because already they've been struggling to get their payments from the sector. And now you're hearing this announcement and you don't know in clear terms where that money is going to come from. So I'm sure in the next couple of days and weeks, they will be knocking at the door of government to get some explanation on how their payments are going to be made, really. But for the consumer, it's good news, even though we will have to pay at some point. I keep saying, government doesn't have anything free to give. It is what we give them that they spend on us. So we're going to have to pay, but when and how that is going to happen, we do not know yet. So on your bill, what the president essentially said was that you just have to look at how much you spent the previous month, and a rebate of 50% will be granted to you. So if you spent 200 Ghana cedis last month, government is going to pick 100 cedis off that. And that is to ensure that people are not reckless in this moment to say that, oh, now electricity is free, so they're just going to consume as much as they want. But you have to reflect on what you spent last month, and then that informs what you're going to spend. And whatever you spend in excess, you have to pay for it. So this intervention can also increase demand, because some people are going to be like, okay, I'm getting a rebate, I can now turn on my AC, I can now do something else. That still gets me to pay just what I was paying. And that was why the president was trying to caution that we still have to conserve, we still have to be prudent with the way we use electricity. And I think we'll join in that call that it is expensive to generate power. It is expensive to maintain the systems in the power sector. So even with this rebate, we still have to be willing to cut our demand and ensure that we are not putting unnecessary stress on the power system, because there is some free amount, coming to us. But all of us share in that responsibility to ensure that we are not being wasteful at this point to unnecessarily increase demand for electricity.
Okay. And if you just have to, again, reiterate that, take consumers through what this really means by way of the consumption patterns. You're saying that it means what? You're getting a rebate on the credits or the amount you spend over the last month within the period that is under the coverage.
You're going to use your March bill as the benchmark. So whatever you spent in March, half of that will be the rebate. So what it means is that if you spend more in April, you only pay. They only give you a rebate for half of what you spent in March. So, like I mentioned, if you go and spend 300 cities instead of 200 that you did in March, you will still get 100 cities rebate, because the rebate is benchmarked against last month's bill. So you have to be mindful that it's not a rebate on what you're going to consume this month or next month, but the benchmark is really what you did in March.
Ultimately, who benefits more within the demographics of the population that we have of consumers?
That is a very tricky one. I see that there is a lifeline intervention, which is a safety net for people who are consuming about 50 units of electricity. So if you're doing 50 kilowatts in a month, your bill is free. You're not going to pay. But the difficulty we have had over the period is that the lifeline for many consumers are not, the lifeline consumers are actually not benefiting from it, because most of these poor people live in clusters. So they have 1 meter serving tens of people, usually in the compound house environment. So they tend to consume more than the 50 units that would have made them benefit from the lifeline tariff. So it's still some of the average, middle-income people who benefit from some of these interventions, because you go to some apartments, you have somebody in a one-bedroom apartment, and he has his own meter. So what that means is that if he consumes 50 units in a month, he's getting a lifeline rebate. He's going to pay very little or nothing. But the poor people who are in compound houses, they go beyond the 50 units and they don't benefit from the lifeline. So I think we probably will need to be targeted and map out at this point, if you really want to target the poor, we have to be able to map out those areas and say, if you're in a compound house, it is not 50 units, but maybe the compound house people can get 100 or 200 units rebate, so that they can also be impacted by the lifeline.
I want to let you go though, but I'm tempted to ask this. How do you do that if you're using the electronic meters, where nobody would know whether this card belongs to a meter that is consumed by compound house households?
I think now technology makes it easy to do that. Okay. We could use the Ghana Post GPS to map out where the poor live, and then be able to say that, these people in this enclave. It will be difficult to be accurate, but at this point, you have to also make sure that you are not burdening the poor. And therefore, you want to, within this 3 months, give a certain margin of error and allow the poor to benefit from this intervention.
Well, thank you very much. And this interactive has been very useful, but more so educative. And Mr. Ben Boakye is Executive Director, the Africa Center for Energy Policy, breaking down what the President's announcement is. And as we open the phone line, 03022116910, again, 03022116910, we also have to get some cues from his discussions or interventions so far. The announcement, he said, is worrying on a general scale for producers of electricity and ultimately the distributors. That will be for ECJ ultimately as well, because we have a certain precedent of not paying the producers or the distributors in time. Ultimately, that has affected their capacity to be able to generate enough, and then cash flow related issues. But for consumers, he says it makes a lot of sense. They will be happy, but ultimately, this is the caveat. The benchmark for you enjoying the 50% rebate is on the consumption over the last 1 month. Okay, so that will be in March. If you exceed that consumption pattern, you pay the normal tariff or the rate for the excess consumption. I hope that all of us understood that. But it's where we get onto the phone lines. We have a regular from Cape Coast who is calling us, and John Kufua, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
What do you make of the President's main announcement? I believe electricity, and for you as a consumer, that will be your main take.
Yeah, well, if you quite remember, last time I said it, that I'm very happy if the President add electricity to it. Because if you have seen so many countries, African countries, economies are worse than ours. And they are benefiting. They are enjoying better than we are enjoying. So knowing our President, I knew he could have done it. So today, yesterday, that is when I heard it, I was so much happy. But my problem is, as they did for the water, the moment you bring any percentage and other things, the calculation is going to be something different. You see? So now water, we don't need any calculation in water. You enjoy 10% and what. Anybody is enjoying free. But this electricity thing, the calculation, I don't support. If the President will gain my maximum, in fact, it should have been absolutely free. It should have been free, so that there won't be any calculation and stuff. If you remember, anytime we reduce electricity tariff, the next month, that is where we pay more. That is where we pay more. For us who are using the prepaid meter, let's wait and see what will happen. Anytime we reduce electricity tariffs, that is where the next month we will pay more. So in order to achieve the maximum support that the President is giving, in fact, it should come again and let's enjoy absolutely free as other West African countries are also enjoying.
Right.
Thank you.
John, don't go away. What's usually your consumption pattern? Do you live alone or you live in a compound house?
Yeah, I'm living. I'm sharing a meter with my partner.
Okay, so John, let's get this straight. And based on the contributions or guidelines as given advisedly by Mr. Ben Boakye, do you know your consumption rate or pattern?
Yeah, I don't know the kilowatt, but I know the amount that we pay.
How much do you pay?
Yeah, we are paying 180 Ghana.
Okay, 180 Ghana. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The last month.
Okay, so make sure that you don't exceed 180 Ghana cedis in April.
I was very happy when he explained that, because people are not aware of that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That's John Kufua from Cape Coast, the Central Regional Capital. Now let's go to Bumkrugu, and it's where we speak to Inusa. Inusa, good morning to you, and thank you for holding on.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. You enjoyed the President's announcement, didn't you?
Oh, I would say I enjoyed it a bit, because taking a look at the previous speech, which the water was free, but for example, I still buy water. You can remember, even yesterday, I asked that question on your wall. I still buy water. Hello?
Yes. In what form? You mean?
I still buy water. And even the electricity issue. for April already we paid for it. So I want to know the procedures, how it will be done. And we, for example, the meter we use we have 3 people using it, and it's 190 cedis per month.
The 3 of you?
Yes.
Okay, so your co-tenant, you in addition, you are 3 using the same meter.
Yes.
Is it an electronic meter or just the manual one?
No, it's the electronic one.
Okay, so and you spend 190, you say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just make sure you don't exceed the 190 the next month. Don't put on the air conditioners or increase the number of times you tend to use the gadget at home. I'm sure you should be fine. The 50%
Yes,
rebate will apply to you.
If you could bring a Minister of Information, I want clarity on this water issue, because listen to the President's speech. The water they said it's free, but assuming you are living in a rented apartment where they sell water.
What's your experience? Where do you buy the water, Inusa?
From those who sell it, those who have the taps and they sell, the commercial people.
Okay. So is it? Do they fill your tank or you buy through the bucket or what, or the gallons or what?
No, it's just drums that we use and buy.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So
Thank you.
Clarity on that.
All right. Okay. Well, we will note that. I'm sure this weekend we'll also have an interaction with the Minister for Information. MFAPO should be able to do that by Sunday evening. So we'll get all those clarifications sorted out. Now let's go to Takrady. We have Ellis. Ellis, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. And your contribution, I'm sure it will be related to the electricity tariff reduction.
Exactly. The gentleman who spoke from ASTEP, I don't know his name.
He spoke from where?
The gentleman who spoke with for ASTEP.
For ASAP, Mr.
He made a contribution to the vulnerables.
Mr. Ben Boache.
Yeah, the unit that is vulnerable use. You know, one person or 1 meter will handle about 20, 30 people. You know, still they are going to suffer because you're not going to be able to help them with this. You are not going to quantify that.
I get your point. And that was what he was referring to. Is that not what you're talking about?
Yes. So how is the government going to assist these people because they are still vulnerable?
So his suggestion is that perhaps they need to do some means testing or get to identify the households that tend to be on such meters so that they will have direct application of the tariffs to them. Otherwise, then it has to be the bulk charges, and that will only be 50% as it is. Are you satisfied now? Okay, so let's go to Adenta, just right here, and we have Kojo Fosu. Kojo Fosu, good morning.
Good morning.
You really enjoyed the announcement by the president. What will be your own take on the subject?
My own take is that the lockdown started in the 3rd week of March. So for those of us that work and stay outside of home, we would only stay home for 1 week in March. And I've just looked at my electricity consumption, and it's very low for the 3 weeks that I was away out of home. But because of the lockdown, I have to come back home. And my electricity bill went up 4 times in the last week of March due to the lockdown. So if we use the March consumption whilst we're staying at home, it's a quarter of what I pay if I'm not locked down. The lockdown has increased my electricity bill 4 times.
Benchmark should be the March bill.
Yes, and I'm saying in March, the 3 weeks that there was no lockdown, the total electricity bill for that period was 100 cedi. For the 1 week that I stayed home, my bill went up to 400.
All right. So, well, we'll have the Minister for Information in the studio, I'm sure, by Sunday evening. And if we're able to get him for that, the lockdown interaction with MFAPO, we will make sure that we pose these questions. And Kojo, Kojo Fosu, thank you very much for that concern you have and well espoused in that phone call. And Kojo Fosu stays in Adenta.